topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast, broadcasting live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. This week and every week, we will reach for a higher purpose in money and life, as well as a focus on health and wellness. Now, let's join your host, Bonita Bell-Andersen, as together we start with Asking Good Questions.
Welcome. This is Bonita Bell-Andersen, and I am your host today. I have with me a special guest. His name is Dean K. Piper, and I'm going to give you a little bio on this guy. He's an influencer, an international radio personality, an on-air talent and podcaster. He's a featured creator, a master marketer, a publicist, a promoter, a published author, a speaker, a coach, and a trainer. He was named number 2 ranked podcaster on Apple and was recently invited as a celebrity talent on Cameo. He's been featured in the news, on the radio, in multiple newspapers and magazines, and on broadcast television. And he describes himself as a positive, ambitious, highly energetic, persistent, persevering, spontaneous metalhead, punker, hippie, skater, surfer, youthful chameleon, professional businessman. Thriving on passion, he lives life to the fullest while experiencing a variety of active interests. He is the Pipeman, and it has been said of him that he is a hybrid of Tony Robbins, Batman, and Howard Stern. The Adventures of Pipeman has received many awards and media features and has been ranked for multiple categories on one of the top 6 live radio shows and podcasts in the world. Besides that, there is the Pipeman Radio Tour, where he travels in the country and the world doing press coverage. When does this guy have time? For major business events, conferences, conventions. I know he just got back from being on the ocean. Music festivals, concerts, award shows, and red carpets in the US, the UK, and Europe. One of the top publicists in music has named Pipeman the king of all festivals. And he says that Pipeman Radio is a show for you. It is many things. It's informative, it's professional, it's motivational, it's inspirational, it's enlightening, it's controversial, it's music, it's shocking comedy, but most importantly, it's just plain fun. And that's what we intend to have today with Dean K. Piper. I'd like to welcome him now.
Hello. And
Hello.
I just have to tell you that it sounded to me like you looked up every one of my personalities, because I kind of have multiple personality disorder, and you just read off about all of them.
I know. Well, it makes you more interesting, but I'm really seriously going, how in the heck do you find time to do all that stuff?
I don't. Like, literally, I think that week I was doing radio coverage on the ocean for Shiprocked. If I got 2 hours a night sleep, that was a lot.
See, Dean, that's going to catch up with you eventually.
Well, it hasn't so far, and I can still outdo my kids and my grandkids. And listen, I got plenty of time to sleep when I'm on the other side.
Okay, got it. Well, we're going to talk about a scintillating topic today in the financial industry about choosing an advisor. Now, I think we're going to try to make this as fun as possible, but I'm going to tell you briefly, before I have you tell your story, I'm going to tell briefly my story. It's been about 25 years ago that I went through a horrific divorce and completely upended my life, and I ended up going into financial services. I would have never been in this industry. It wouldn't have been for that complete left turn in my life. And I basically studied the role of women in the industry because I saw a lot of guys out there and actually had different ones who said, you'd be good at this. You should try this. So 25 years later, here I am doing commentary on my own podcast. So tell me about you. Tell me how you became an advisor. How long were you in that role? Why you left? And especially, what did you learn from that experience?
It's kind of ironic. I was listening to you and I thought to myself, I think I passed the baton to you because when I left the business, went through a horrific divorce at about the same time as you were going through a horrific divorce and getting into the business.
And we didn't know that 25 years later, we are going to be talking about this.
And look at that. Look at how the universe works is like, so I went into this industry and now you're in that.
And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this industry.
Right. So it's like it just all, the universe put all the puzzle pieces together.
Right.
But what really started it for me was, okay, so I was in retail for 10 years. I worked since I'm 11 years old. I've been a salesperson since I'm 13. I lived on the streets from 15 years old, brought myself off the streets, put myself through college, no help from anybody. Even then, we were talking about time.
I also paid for college myself.
Good for you. I love that because you get a lot more out of it. Because this is what I saw when I was in college. I couldn't deal with the kids my age because mommy and daddy was paying for their stuff. They didn't respect it. They didn't understand it. And, I was on mission. So I was working 80 hours a week in a retail store doing pools and spas, which I was in that business for 10 years. And I was pulling 17 credits a semester at Rutgers, which is, for anybody that knows, 12 credits is full time. Yeah. So, basically, you do what you got to do. But the thing is I had a brother that was working at Prudential. And he would multiple times try to get me to come work over there. And, I was kind of in my comfort zone. I'd been in this industry since I was a kid. I was, very good at it. And I was doing well for somebody my age, and so why switch? But then I wanted more. And so I one day, let's see, I was like, I think 20 years old or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll come in. And so then I started my career at Prudential, where I got my life insurance license, my Series 6, my Series 63, health insurance license, P&C license, all that. Okay. And it was interesting. My journey is very interesting because, so you work for a company like Prudential. Some people might not like what I'm about to say, but they're a very big company that does things that the smaller person would not be able to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And so basically, I was a go-getter. So when I first started in the business, I was working from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. That was who I was, and my goal was to be number one in that office. And I was in an office with 85 agents. And of course, in that business, you go for try to win the trip to the business conference and all that stuff. So I wanted to do all that.
Yeah.
That's where I started with my, also with my, credentials by getting the LUTCF. And so I was the number one agent in that whole office, and basically what I learned at Prudential was that was not financial planning. I learned it was selling a product. Variable appreciable life is all you were supposed to sell to anybody. They would have the weekly meeting. I bet
that they would give you a bonus if you did sell a lot of that.
Oh yeah. Well, not only that, but they'd have the weekly meeting and you could sell 15 health insurance policies, 20 auto policies, 50 homeowners policies. But if you didn't sell any life, you better be hiding under the desk because you were a goose egg. Okay. And all those things made you money, but what made them a lot of money was the life insurance. And that was, it fits in everybody's pocket. They call it financial needs analysis, what you go out and do.
Yeah.
And then you had this thing, it was called the Opser tray, which was this metal tray with all the people in because you had an area as an agent. And your manager taught you to pull these Opser sheets out and read how much dividends there was and how much cash value, and do an illustration of how much more val that could buy for the person, and so basically those are the things you could not do if you're an independent or a smaller shop.
Right. Why?
Because it's kind of illegal. Just saying. But hopefully nobody heard that. No. Okay. And so I also was too young to be making the amount of money I was making. I was making like 70 grand a year at like 21 years old working for Prudential, because I was out there like,
man, you were rolling in the dough.
I was killing it. And nobody could afford to hang out with me my age. So I used to be the big shot, treating everybody, and go to like Tavern on the Green. Hey, let's go to dinner. My American Express bill alone was like $2,500 a month. I had 35 credit cards. Listen, okay, you're doing financial stuff, but yet you have 35 credit cards, okay? And here's the thing, people. Don't give a 21-year-old 35 credit cards, okay? No. And so I was basically making 70 and spending like 150.
Yeah.
So I was going into a scenario where I was actually filing bankruptcy because I listened to some stupid attorney that gave me bad advice. Like, I had bills I only owed $20 he wanted to put in a bankruptcy, but I was young and didn't listen. And I'm saying this stuff because, these are all part of things people need to learn about financial planning and advising, because it's not just, hey, your investments or hey, your insurance. It's the whole picture, and a true advisor.
You're creating a partnership with somebody.
Mm-hmm. And a true advisor is not selling you product. Yeah. They are looking at the whole picture and doing a true financial needs analysis. Yeah. And that is the difference. And that's where things changed for me, because I did win this trip down in Florida in Marco Island, and there was a nor'easter up in Jersey. And so and my dad lived down here in Florida. And so
where you live now.
Where I live now. And so we were sitting there. I was going through bankruptcy, losing everything. I did have a job that would get me out of the hole, because going bankrupt and then still making 70 grand, go out of the hole. And I was sitting at this place, Shooters in Fort Lauderdale, on the water with my dad, sipping a margarita. Well, there was a nor'easter. And I looked at him and I'm like, what the hell am I doing in New Jersey? I didn't tell him what I was going to do next. But, when you go through hard times, sometimes you make decisions on the fly. You just got to change your life. Yep. Because that's what gets you in a different direction.
Well, for me, it was completely rethinking my life and what I wanted to be in the future.
Yeah. And I remember very specifically, I went back to New Jersey, and my sales manager at Prudential, he wanted me to do this deal that would have made me $100 grand in commission. And my district manager wanted me to do it too, but it was basically replacing insurance, and not in the right way. And I refused. And they told me if I did not do it, that they would have to let me go. Oh, wow. And I told them, don't bother. Have a nice day. And I got in my car and I drove to Florida.
Wow.
And so basically.
But you had your integrity intact.
100%. I mean, that would have changed my life, that sale. That would have changed my life drastically. Okay. And we can't see if we're looking at the tree, we're not going to see the forest. And so basically I was looking at the forest, and yes, I want to sleep at night. And yes, I don't want to go to jail, because that could potentially happen.
Mhm. Yep.
And I'm going to be the fall guy for sure. I'm not, even at 21, I wasn't that stupid.
Right.
And that's why they have a 21-year-old do that, because they think they're going to be that stupid. And so anyway, what happened was, the minute I left there, and this is practice that was done all the time. This is the first time I've told this part of the story and like revealing what really goes on. But basically,
Dean, you found out who really owns the clients.
Oh yeah, because what they did, the sales manager did, is he lapsed every bit of insurance I wrote, gave it to another sales agent on his staff, so that what would happen is the other agent would rewrite it, and the sales manager would get a bonus for like double business. And then it lapsed off for me. So I went to Florida, and I actually went to a Prudential to maybe work at Prudential in Florida here, and maybe that'll be a better one. They wouldn't hire me because they said I had 10 million of insurance lapsed off in the past month. So, I was no longer hireable by Prudential.
Yep. And
then I saw this ad in the paper down here. I know to the younger generation right now listening to this, they probably don't. I'm speaking like a foreign language right now, because there was a time where that's how we got jobs. We went and got the paper and looked in the classified.
Yeah, like what's that?
And I saw this ad that said make 125,000 plus. Blah 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 blah. I don't even care what the rest of it said. I was 21 years old. Going through bankruptcy, just quit my job, had no money to even eat, and I wasn't going to go work at McDonald's. And I was looking to be in the financial business still. And so basically, I went on this interview, and there was no brokers there, no desks. There's 3 owners, and they're telling me how I'm going to make 20 grand a month, and they show. Like sometimes what you see in the movies, they show me their W-2s from the year before. They made $1 million.
What product was it?
It was a commodity firm.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but a legal one, not licensed. So I don't know what they said sounded good to me. It sounded more my personality anyway, because I really hated going in people's houses and scaring them about death. Right. And how you have to pitch that crap.
Sure.
And it was more like my personality, and, there's legit people and there's not legit people.
Yes.
Okay. And so basically what I did was, and the Series 3 is one of the hardest exams you could take. It's harder than the 7.
Yeah.
But I remember I went home that day. I was talking to my dad and my brother. I was talking about how I was going to make 20 grand a month, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, you're bankrupt. You have no money. Maybe you should start with like making $250. Why don't you get a real job? And that's the line I got. So there's significance to me saying that, because that was a fire in my belly for me. And I went and I sat on a Fort Lauderdale beach on the beach for 3 days and studied that Series 3 exam. And took it like on a Monday. Like I just, went right through it. And like there were 50 other candidates in that brokerage firm that were vying for, table spots. Basically, the guys had just opened a new firm. They were working somewhere else. They opened a new firm. And so I trusted in that, because I was young enough to not be, like
you didn't know anything else.
Yeah, I wasn't. I was young enough to not be pessimistic or skeptical, okay, and to believe what was going to happen. And I'm a big believer. What the mind conceives, what the mind believes is what you conceive. So, basically I went for it all out. And then so that first month in the business, in that part of the business, they said to me, listen, I know you're a superstar at Prudential, but even though it's the same world, the quote unquote financial world, this is a whole different world.
Yeah.
And what you did there is not going to work here. And they were teaching me how to sell. Now, I'd been a great salesperson since I was 13 years old because my dad was one of the best salespeople and he trained me. And basically, I said, I basically was going to be like number one, and I didn't want to listen to him. I was a cocky 21-year-old. So I did not do what they told me to do and how to sell it. I did what I thought would work. Well, that first month I made zero.
Right.
Because, and I say this because if you want to succeed in life, no matter how good you are, no matter how much you know, you can always learn more.
Right.
And also being that cocky 21-year-old, I went home and I set this goal. I have this thing that I teach now in my motivational stuff of how to set goals. And it was something I did this day. And I wrote out, I call it a goal getter. And you number 1 to 10 and 10 things you want most out of life. They could be short-term, long-term. Because, I read Think and Grow Rich and I read all those books, but most people don't follow the guidelines in Think and Grow Rich because it's a lot of work. Yeah. So I basically simplified it. And what I put on there was make $25,000 this month was the number one thing on the list. Now, I don't know what right I had to do that because I had never made $25,000 in a month. They told me 20, so I wanted to do more than what they said. And I just made zero. Okay, and I'm bankrupt. But that's how I roll. That's how I think, and, in order to succeed, you have to have nothing to fall back on because you'll always fall back on it.
Right.
And I decided I was going to prove these people wrong and do it their way. Like, I know I wasn't going to do it their way because I wanted to succeed. Now it's like, I'm going to show that their way doesn't work either. And I'll never forget it. Alan Sadler out of Savannah, Georgia, a Jewish attorney out of Savannah, Georgia, can be a harder person to sell commodity futures and options to. I had gotten so many no's by the time I got to this guy that I did not know what to do with the yes. Like, you get trained on the no's and nobody teaches you what to do with the yes. So the first time I did what they said to do, it was one line and he said, yes. And I literally dropped the phone because we used real phones then.
Yeah.
And I ran into the boss's office that were tapping in, listening, because that's what they did back in the day. And in fact, the NFA and the CFTC, they require that. And I'm like, what do I do now? Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And they're like, well, you might want to go back to the phone because he's probably still on the phone and you just dropped the phone. And so, but anyway, so that was my first client in that business. End of story. That second month, in that business, you get paid once a month and it's a big meeting. And if you have no money, you hide under the desk. If you're making big money, you're the big macher, as we would say. And so I made $25,000, or not $25,000. I made $24,743.
Close enough.
Close enough. And it was in a check. Can you tell me where the first place I went once I got that check?
Oh, what did you do? Go and buy a big honking truck or something?
No.
No.
But maybe no. No, literally, I went to my brother and I shoved it in his face and I told him to get a real job.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And then I went to a bank, cashed it. Then my bosses required me because they said, hey, those suits you're wearing, they just don't cut it here. They may cut it in insurance. They don't cut it here. And they're like, now that you made some money, come back tomorrow. and you should be wearing like an Armani suit and Armani tie, and we'll take you shopping for it.
Wow.
You know, and so and then and that car you're driving, no, you have to get a different car. You know how it is in that business. It's like it's all image.
Matter.
You know, but it's true though. How can you tell people how to handle their finances if you don't appear like you have any?
Yeah. But I'm hoping that this discussion today about choosing a financial advisor is they're going to be able to look deeper, because they're going to have an initial response. They're going to have an initial opinion about that person just by the way they look.
Well, that's why I'm bringing that up, because just because your advisor looks good doesn't mean they're a good advisor. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
So now that wasn't enough for me, not the looking good, but you should look good because people are going to, it's first impression.
Right.
But that's not all. You do have to dig deeper. That's why I had gotten 15 licenses and 4 professional designations. And I was a knowledge junkie, and I was addicted to CNBC 24/7. So much so that when I first got married, it freaked out my wife, because I would wake up in the middle of the night, pop up like a zombie, and call like Singapore or Hong Kong to find out prices, and then go back to bed. And she'd be like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
You know, or she'd try to turn off Bloomberg on the TV at 2 a.m. I'd wake up. I'm like, "What are you doing?" So,
well,
yes.
Okay. So, yeah, you've been there, done that.
Yeah, that's the beginning story. That was the long answer to your short question.
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, what do you think you learned from that period of your life?
This is what I learned: a few things. Number one, I learned that just because somebody's a big company doesn't mean they're a good company. So always do your research. Don't just trust because of a company or somebody's name. I mean, look at Bernie Madoff. People trusted him because he had a big name. I was just saying to somebody the other day, I don't get it. All you had to do is look at the statements, and they looked fake.
I know. Okay? And that printing them upstairs. The printing press was upstairs from his office.
Exactly. So that's part of what I'm bringing up, is like, you got to look at all the details. You got to look at all the little things. You have to be your own advocate, because they're not going to be your advocate. Right. You have to do your research completely, because at the end of the day, it's your money, right? And you want to make sure that it's being handled by somebody that cares. So that's another thing that I got out of it. Like, I became somebody that cared. There's not a lot of people sometimes in that business that care, and you need somebody that cares, that they'll treat your money as if it were their own. What I also learned from that whole experience there is that, it was better to be independent, so you could actually choose products for your clients.
Yeah, that's why I went independent.
Fit the client.
Yep.
Not selling them a product, but actually getting to know your client more than just the financial needs analysis. But what are their goals? What are they looking to do? What stage of life are they in? There's so many variables that come into play. And then creating a custom portfolio that fits their needs and their needs alone, because their needs are going to be different than every other person out there.
Yeah.
And so that's the big thing I learned through the whole process, was there's some things, even the investments that some people look down upon, they may be good for certain types of people.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, and what their needs are. So you need somebody that is experienced and has the ability, okay, this is a big one for me, has the ability to provide any type of product to you. So in other words, if you're dealing with a financial advisor that only sells insurance, they're not going to be able to handle your other types of investments. So they're probably not going to tell you to do them. I would deal with somebody that has the ability to handle any type of product pretty much.
Right.
So that they can give you a legitimate advice, opposed to advice based on just what they have.
Yeah. Well, how do you think you find somebody who's knowledgeable that fits like that?
Well,
Are you just going to go by your gut instincts? What do you think?
I don't think just gut. I think gut is always part of everything in life, in my opinion, but it's got to go farther than that. Okay. First of all, you have to actually, I think you have to actually get along with your advisor too. Okay. It's just like a lawyer. Okay. I don't want a lawyer that's going to browbeat me like they're better than me.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, because that's the only way that you guys can work together. But so I think that's the first thing. Because listen, if they have all the knowledge in the world, if they're not on the same page as you, it's not going to be helpful.
No.
I think the most important things to start with is find somebody you connect with, but also understands your needs and understands how you operate and asks you questions. I think that's a big key. We're on here, ask good questions. Well, I don't think it's just the customer that needs to ask good questions. I think it's who you're looking to hire that needs to ask good questions. That's how I'll determine if they're a good financial advisor. What questions are they asking me before they're trying to tell me how I should handle my money?
One of the things that's interesting is what I have seen, and I'm talking about risk now, is I've seen people take too much risk because they got sold a product that wasn't appropriate. What do you think about how you figure out how much risk you should take? And again, I think your answer is going to be getting back to what kind of questions is that advisor asking you?
Yeah, it's like it depends on the person. If somebody has $10 million, if they put 10,000 in a risky investment, it's not really a risk.
Yeah.
If somebody has $20,000 and puts 10,000, that's a huge risk. I think it also matters what stage of life you're at and what your goals are.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in the business, one of my brokers, his father worked for MCI WorldCom. He was 3 years from retirement, had me analyze his portfolio. His portfolio was his pension consisted of 100% MCI WorldCom stock. At the time, MCI WorldCom was at about $80.
Yep.
And I said to him, listen, this has done great for you. You're 3 years from retirement. No matter how good this investment is, it's time for you to change from growth mode into preservation mode to prepare for income mode.
Right. Did he listen?
Well, that's a good question. You would think anybody would listen. And what I said is, I'm like, you should diversify some of it away into something safer and then start packing. Oh, no, but blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, so take half off the table. You can keep half in there, take half off the table and put it in something ultra conservative. And then if it goes up, great, you're still making money. If you lose money, you're still ahead of where you were to begin with. And he said, oh, but we just had a meeting and the head guy said it's going to $140. I'll never forget verbatim the conversation because it was so insane. And he just would not listen to me. I'm like, listen, I'm not asking you to even put your money with me. I'm giving you free advice because your son works for me. So I have no stake in this whatsoever. Didn't listen to me. 2 weeks later is when MCI WorldCom went to basically almost zero.
So he lost. Did he lose everything then?
Everything. So now how are you going to get everything back to retire in 3 years? And that's the part people need to think about. No matter how good the investment is, you need to think of those things. You need to think forward and present, And so I'm a risk taker, but you only risk what you can afford to lose and don't need to replace.
Right. Well, there's another type of person out there that I've run into, and it's because people have trusted me, which is very humbling to have people trust you a lot. But sometimes people will say, oh, you just take care of it. I don't want to deal with it. You just take care of it. Well, if you're a reputable advisor, that might be okay. But if you're not, What do you say to somebody who says, I don't have time, I want to be completely hands off of my investments?
Well, part of my answer to that is even though I had power of attorney because I was an RIA and a CTA and I didn't have to ask permission, I always talked to them.
Yeah.
And I never placed trades without them knowing, even though I was able to, you know. And a lot of times they would say to me, why you call me? Just do it. And they would say exactly what you're saying. Why? Because number one, I don't think you should give somebody that much control. Again, we could use the Bernie Madoff example, you know, because at the end of the day, it's your money. You should always have a say. And our job is to advise you, in my opinion. If you're an advisor, it's to advise you. And then it's your job to decide whether that's good for you or not, or if you have to trust there. But still, you know, I would be worried to say that to somebody without, and especially if you don't know who they are, because again, we go back to there's good people and bad people. And that doesn't even mean bad larceny, maybe bad because they just don't know how to manage money.
Yeah. One of my favorite things just about life in general is that you need to be 100% responsible for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is completely not being responsible for yourself. So you may want to be hands off, but but I like what you said. You've got to still connect with the advisor, have some knowledge of what's going on and why you're doing it.
There's some people that only talk to their advisor once a year.
Yeah.
I think that's insane.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that as the advisor, and I never did. That's the point, is like, how much does your advisor care if he's only talking to you or she's only talking to you once a year?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I go back to that word care.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you one thing, when I was in that business, I cared about other people's money way more than mine.
Yeah. Well, can you think of anything else? I mean, I'm thinking about some of the things. What are the risks of getting it wrong? I'm thinking of advisors who might have like conflicting interests or questionable credentials. Do you have any thoughts about advisors that just maybe this leads into checking their credentials, make sure they're on the level?
Well, that's an interesting subject too. And to talk about the first thing, that goes back to what I was saying before. Okay. It is the same thing. You know, you just have to know who you're dealing with, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're selling products, but not other products, that's something you have to take. Like, that's where that conflict of interest comes from.
Yeah.
Because listen, I'm going to be blunt. If I'm an advisor and I only handle Fidelity and, you know, whatever else funds, as an example, and you say, well, what about blah, blah, blah fund? If I don't handle it, I'm going to talk into the one I have.
Right.
I mean, let's call it what it is. Advisors are looking to make money, and they should make money if they're doing the right thing. There's nothing wrong with an advisor making money. But in the scenario of, you have to think about, are they giving you the advice because it's the best advice or the best advice of what they have to offer?
Which leads me into the next thing. And that is, you know what I see a lot is people going out on Google and looking and seeing articles about, well, you should only deal with a fiduciary. And I'm a fiduciary, but what do you think
pretty
about
much every licensed person is?
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that somebody that I know has no idea what they're even talking about and saying, well, are you a fiduciary? They don't even, you know, how do you think people should, what do they need to know about that whole term of being a fiduciary?
Well, first of all, just because you're a fiduciary doesn't mean you're actually legit. You know, I mean, just to be blunt, you have a fiduciary responsibility. It doesn't mean you actually exercise it. Let's say that first.
Right.
I also want to mention too, we were talking about credentials. So there's somebody that I think is one of the most amazing speakers there is that speaks on financial stuff, but I think she's great as a speaker. I think the advice she's given people is garbage. Okay. But
Okay.
people swear by her. She's not even licensed. So, people,
Yeah.
here's something you have to understand. There's people that are licensed, registered advisors, and there's people that sell programs on how to invest.
Yeah.
They are not the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
There's those that do and those that teach. Okay. And so if they're selling you a program, they're not giving you they're not doing any favors, and they're certainly not being your fiduciary. That's for
Right.
sure. And the point is, not only because of the regulations, but because, listen, there's certain things, if you're in a regulated business, that if you're licensed, you can't say that somebody that's not licensed can say. So somebody can get up there and be a speaker and say, hey, all you have to do is buy low and sell high and you'll make money. But it's a lot deeper than that.
Right.
Okay. That's pretty obvious. And some of the advice these people give doesn't take certain things into account. Okay. One of those things is sometimes you won't get a fill. So they could say, oh, yeah, all you have to do is buy it at 25. But there's times that maybe there's not a market for it and you won't be able to buy it there. Or they show you their charts of how much money they made. That's called paper trading. I've never met a paper trader that lost money. I can tell you right now. I did meet a lot of money managers that had long, great track records. As soon as I put money into their thing, it lost money, and I couldn't understand why.
Dean, we could probably go on for a couple hours,
I
but
know,
we're
right?
running out of time.
Yes.
I want your bottom line thinking about how advisors get paid.
I think 100% is somebody that sold pretty much everything there is, that the advisors you should be dealing with are people like you, people that
Meaning that, like, I call myself a fee-based. It's a flat fee. Flat
That's
fee.
what I was going to say. Fee-based.
Right.
The reason being, okay, so you have fee-based and you have commission-based. Commission-based, I'm telling you right now, every single broker that sells commission-based are going to sell you based on the commission, not based on the product.
Right.
Okay. So if
based
they have
on how much they're going to get.
Yep.
And I hope that they would be good, ethical people. But sometimes that's hard.
And maybe they're not being unethical. They just don't know better either. And this is what they have. You only know what you know.
Right.
But they also need to make their car payment. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you're fee-based like you are, you still have to make your car payment, but your car payment is based on performance, not based on product. Okay. Yeah. So you're in it with the client. Okay. If the client loses money, you lose money. If the client makes money, you make money. Why is that? Because you're getting a percentage of the assets.
You make me think of a big firm that does a lot of marketing that says just that. We do better when you do better.
Yeah, see that? And it is true, because I think the decisions you're going to make as a money manager, as an advisor, are going to be way different, because you want to make sure you do the right thing to keep that business. Because that's another thing. When you're fee-based, you're not making those big hits like the commission-based is. Okay. So you're looking for your clients to stay with you a long time. If you do not do right by them, they're gone, and you made very minimal money off of it. You are making a living based on them sticking with you 5, 10, 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's only going to happen if you're treating them right. And of course, you're only going to treat them right when you're fee-based.
Right.
And so, yes, 100% go with somebody fee-based, go with somebody that has letters after their name, go with somebody that has, also check, we didn't talk about this, but it's very important, and believe it when you read it, because I had prospects that didn't. Check with the government agencies that are regulating, and the self-regulatory agencies. Look at their track record, look at their customer complaints or reparations or anything, and see what they are, because a lot of times you'll find they're pretty consistent if there's anything there. And don't think, oh, my broker wouldn't do that.
No,
they wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be in their record.
Right. So we are running out of time, and on the website, on the AskGoodQuestionsPodcast.com website, there's a bonus downloads where there will be a PDF on questions, I'm going to try to summarize all this into a PDF that you can download for asking, pertinent questions to that advisor. So, any final thoughts on this whole topic?
My final thoughts are, I'm not in the business anymore, so put your money with Bonita Bell-Andersen.
I'm not paying him to say that either.
She didn't even know I was going to say
I
that's why
didn't
she's
even know
laughing.
I was going to say that. But we really, truly, no matter what you do, we really, truly, I think both of us can say that we truly want the best for you. We want you to be informed. That's kind of where I come from. I think Dean comes from that space as well, that please be informed, be educated. You're responsible for your own self. So you need to be educated about these types of things. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today on Ask Good Questions.
Today's episode is over, but we did ask good questions again, didn't we? Don't miss out as we broadcast live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. Join Bonita Bell-Andersen next week for more conversations with experts on finances, retirement, behavioral finance issues, health and wellness, and more. Until then, remember to ask good questions.